For many years, Mr. Harry worked for the museum at the University of Oxford. He collected drawings and pictures of English country houses and churches. Collecting pictures of houses and churches seems like a safe job. But Mr. Harry found that even this peaceful work could have some surprising and scary moments. He bought many pictures for the museum from the London shop of Mr. J.W. Hamilton. Twice a year, Mr. Hamilton sent a list of pictures to his regular customers, who could then choose which pictures they wanted to see before deciding whether to buy them. In February 1935, Mr. Harry received a list from Mr. Hamilton with the following letter.
Dear Sir, I think you might be interested in picture number 879 in our list, which I will be happy to send to you if you wish. J.W. Hamilton.
Mr. Harry turned to number 879 in the list and found the following note. Number 879, Artist Unknown. A picture of an English country house, early 19th century. Size, 25 centimeters by 40 centimeters. Price, £20. It did not sound very interesting, and the price seemed high. However, Mr. Harry added it to the list of pictures he asked Mr. Hamilton to send him. The pictures arrived at the museum one Saturday afternoon, just after Mr. Harry had left. They were sent to his rooms at the college so he could look at them over the weekend. Mr. Harry found them on his table when he and his friend, Mr. Perry, came in to have tea. Picture number 879 showed the front of quite a large country house. It had 4 rows of windows, with the door in the middle of the bottom row. There were trees on both sides of the house and a large lawn in front of it. The letters AWF were written in the corner of the picture. Mr. Harry thought it was not very well done, likely the work of an amateur artist, and he could not understand why Mr. Hamilton thought it was worth £20. He turned it over and saw that there was a piece of paper on the back with part of a name on it. All he could read were the ends of 2 lines of writing. The first said, Ungley Hall. The second, Sex. Mr. Harry thought it would be interesting to see if he could find the name of the house in one of his guidebooks before sending the picture back on Monday morning. In the meantime, he put the picture on the table, lit the lamp because it was now getting dark, and made the tea. While they were having tea, his friend picked up the picture, looked at it, and said,
Where's this house, Harry?
That's just what I was going to find out,
said Harry, taking a book from the shelf.
If you look at the back, you'll see it's something Hall in either Essex or Sussex. Half the name's missing, you see. I don't suppose you recognize the house, do you?
No, I don't. It's from Hamilton, I suppose, isn't it? Is it for the museum?
said Mr. Perry.
Yes. Well, I would buy it if the price was £3, but for some reason he wants £20 for it. I can't think why. It's not a very good picture, and there aren't even any figures in it to make it more interesting,
replied Harry.
I agree it's not worth £20, but I don't think it's too bad. The light seems rather good to me, and I think there is a figure here, just at the edge in the front,
said Mr. Perry.
Let me see.
Said Harry.
Well, it's true, the light is quite well done. Where's the figure? Oh yes, just the head in the very front of the picture.
And indeed there it was, right on the front of the picture, just the head of a man or a woman looking towards the house. Harry had not noticed it before.
Although it's better than I thought at first, I still can't spend £20 of the museum's money on a picture of a house I don't even know,
he said. Mr. Perry, who had some work to finish, soon left, and Mr. Harry spent the time before dinner trying to find the name of the house in his guidebooks.
If I knew the letter before the ngly, it would be easy. But there are many more names ending in angly than I thought,
he said to himself. Dinner in Mr. Harry's college was at 8 o'clock, and afterwards a few of his friends came back to his rooms to play cards. During a pause in the game, Mr. Harry picked up the picture from the table without looking at it and passed it to a man named Beckham, who was interested in pictures. Beckham looked at it and said,
This is really a very fine picture, you know, Harry. The light is very well done, in my opinion, and though the figure is rather unpleasant, it is quite interesting.
Yes, isn't it?
said Harry, who was too busy giving drinks to his guests to look at the picture again. When his visitors had gone, Harry had to finish writing a letter, so it was after midnight before he was ready to go to bed. The picture lay face upwards on the table where Beckham had left it, and as Harry was switching off the lamp, he saw it. For a moment, he was too surprised to move. Then he slowly picked up the picture and stared at it in horror. In the middle of the lawn, in front of the unknown house, there was a figure where there had been no figure earlier. It was crawling on hands and knees towards the house, covered in a strange black coat with a white cross on the back. After a second or two, Mr. Harry took the picture by one corner and carried it to an empty room. There he locked it, face downwards, in a cupboard, then closed and locked the door of the empty room. He went back to his own room and locked the door behind him. Before going to bed, he sat down and wrote a note describing in detail the extraordinary change in the picture since he had received it. He was happy to remember that Mr. Beckham, who had looked at the picture earlier in the evening, had also seen a rather unpleasant figure. He decided that in the morning he must ask someone to look carefully at the picture with him, and he must try very hard to find the name of the house. He would ask his neighbor, Mr. Garwood, to have breakfast with him. Then he would spend the morning looking for the house in his guidebooks. Mr. Garwood arrived at 9 o'clock, and the two men sat down to eat breakfast. When they had finished, Mr. Harry, feeling both nervous and excited, rushed to the empty room. He unlocked the cupboard, took out the picture, still face downwards, and without looking at it, went back to his own room and put it into Garwood's hands.
Now, Garwood, I want you to tell me what you see in that picture. Describe it, please, in detail. I'll tell you why afterwards,
He said.
Well, I have here a picture of an English country house by moonlight.
Said Garwood.
Moonlight. Are you sure?
Oh, yes. The moon is shown quite clearly, and there are clouds in the sky.
All right. Go on. But I'm sure that there was no moon when I first saw it,
Said Harry.
Well, there's not much more I can say. The house has 4 rows of windows. There's a door in the middle of the bottom row, and
Garwood continued.
But what about figures?
Said Harry with great interest.
figures? There aren't any.
Replied Garwood.
What? No figure on the grass in front?
No, not a thing.
Are you sure?
Of course I am. But there's one other thing.
Oh, what's that?
One of the windows on the ground floor, on the right of the door, is open.
Oh, is it really? Oh dear. I suppose he's got into the house.
Said Harry with great excitement. He hurried across to where Garwood was sitting, took the picture from him, and saw for himself. It was quite true. There was no figure on the lawn, and the window was open. For a moment, Harry was too surprised to speak. Then he sat down at his desk and wrote for a few minutes. When he had finished, he gave 2 papers to Garwood. He asked him to sign the first one, which was Garwood's own description of the picture, then to read the other one, which was the note Harry had written the night before.
What can it all mean?
Asked Garwood.
That's what I must find out. Now, there are 3 things I must do. First, I must ask Beckham exactly what he saw when he looked at the picture last night. Then I must have the picture photographed before it goes any further. And thirdly, I must find out where this house is.
Said Harry.
I can take the photograph for you myself.
Said Garwood.
But, you know, I think we are seeing something terrible happening here. The question is, has it already happened or is it going to happen? You really must find out where this house is.
He looked at the picture again and shook his head.
I think you are right, you know. He has got in. I'm sure there will be some trouble in that house.
I'll tell you what I'll do.
Said Harry.
I'll show the picture to old Dr. Terry. He grew up in Essex, and he often goes to Sussex to see his brother, who lives there. He's been going there for years. He must know both places quite well.
That's a very good idea. But I think I heard Terry say that he was going away this weekend,
said Garwood.
You're right. I remember now. He's gone to London for the weekend. I'll leave a note asking him to see me as soon as he returns. Meanwhile, you take the picture and photograph it, and I'll see Beckham and ask him what he saw when he looked at it last night.
He paused.
You know, I don't think £20 is too much to ask for this picture, after all,
he added. In a short time, Harry returned to his room, bringing Mr. Beckham with him. Mr. Beckham said that when he had looked at the picture, the figure was just starting to crawl across the lawn. He remembered that it was wearing a black coat with something white on the back. He was not sure if it was a cross. While he was writing this down, Mr. Garwood returned and said that he had photographed the picture.
What are you going to do now, Harry? Are you going to sit and watch the picture all day?
Asked Mr. Garwood.
No, I don't think we need to do that,
replied Harry.
You see, there has been plenty of time since I looked at it last night for the creature in the picture to finish what it wants to do, but it has only gone into the house. The window is open, and it must still be in there. I think it wants us to see what happens next. Anyway, I don't think the picture would change much during the day. I suggest that we all go for a walk after lunch and come back here for tea. I'll leave the picture on my table and lock the door. My servant has a key and can get in if he wants to, but nobody else can.
The others agreed that this was a good plan. They also decided not to talk about the unusual picture with anyone, knowing it could cause excitement and arguments. At about 4 o'clock, they came back to Mr. Harry's rooms for tea. When they entered the room, they were surprised to find Robert, the servant, sitting in Mr. Harry's armchair and staring in horror at the picture on the table. Robert had worked in the college for many years and had never before behaved in such an unusual way. He seemed to feel this himself and tried to jump to his feet when the three men came in.
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to sit down,
he said.
That's all right, Robert. I was going to ask you sometime what you thought of that picture,
said Mr. Harry.
Well, sir, of course I don't really understand pictures, but I wouldn't like my little girl to see it. I'm sure it would give her bad dreams. It doesn't seem the right kind of picture to leave lying around. It could frighten anybody, seeing that awful thing carrying off the poor baby. That's what I think, sir. Will you need me any more today, sir? Thank you, sir,
replied the servant. Robert left the room, and the three men at once went to look at the picture. The house was still there, under the moon and clouds. But the window that had been open was now shut, and the figure was back on the lawn. This time, however, it wasn't crawling. Now it was walking with long steps towards the front of the picture. The moon was behind it, and the dark material of its garment completely covered its face. The three men were thankful that they could now see a white forehead and a few long, thin hair. Its legs beneath the garment were terribly thin, and its arms held something that looked like a child. It was impossible to tell whether the child was alive or not. The three friends watched the picture until it was time for dinner, but it did not change at all. They hurried back to Harry's room as soon as dinner was finished. The picture was still where they had left it, but the figure had gone, and the house was quiet under the moon and clouds.
Well, now we really must try to find where this house is,
said Mr. Harry. They took out the guidebooks and began to search. It was almost 2 hours later when Harry cried,
"Ha! This looks like it."
He began reading aloud from the guide to Essex he was holding.
Anningley, interesting 15th century church containing the tombs of the Warner family, whose home, Anningley Hall, stands just behind the church. The family is now extinct. The last member of the family disappeared very mysteriously in 1875 while still a child. His father, Sir Frederick Warner, a well-known amateur artist, lived alone until he was found dead in his house 2 years later, after he had just completed a picture of the hall.
As Mr. Harry finished reading, there was a knock on the door, and Dr. Terry came in. He had just returned from London and had found Harry's note. He agreed at once that the picture was of Anningley Hall, which was not far from where he had grown up.
"Do you have any explanation of the figure, Terry?"
asked Harry.
I don't know, I'm sure, Harry.
Dr. Terry replied.
When I was a boy, some of the old people in Anningley still used to talk about the disappearance of the Warner child. They said that Sir Frederick had a lot of trouble with some of the local people coming onto his land to steal his fish and his birds. He decided to catch them all and have them punished, and one by one, he did, until there was only one left. This was a man called Stephen, whose family had once been rich and important in that part of Essex. In fact, some of them had their tombs in the village church as well. However, the family had lost all their land and money over the years, and Stephen felt rather bitter about it all. For a long time, Sir Frederick could not catch him doing anything wrong, until one night his men found Stephen with some dead birds in Sir Frederick's woods. There was a fight, and one of the men was shot. This was just what Sir Frederick needed. The judge was all on his side, of course, and poor Stephen was hanged a few days later. People thought that some friend of Stephen's stole Sir Frederick's little boy in revenge, to put an end to the Warner family as well. But I should say now that it looks more as if old Stephen managed the job himself. Brrr. I don't like to think about it. Let's have a drink, shall we?
The story of the picture was told to a few people. Some believed it, and some did not. Mr. Hamilton knew nothing about it, except that the picture was unusual in some way. It is now in the museum, and although it has been carefully watched, no one has ever seen it change again.